of sacrificial giving of himself. And from that point forward, once the ark of God was established, at least in this place, there was this continual attitude of a burnt offering. And if we could apply the picture again from Romans 12, a living sacrifice, a living burnt offering, where the fire of God comes down, even as it did in the days of Solomon later on, and consumed the sacrifices. I believe this is even a picture that is leading up into that. But there is this sacrifice, this burnt offering that is being made before the Lord. And as soon as David had made an end of offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. Now, it is important that we start paying an even greater attention to what is about to happen. You'll recall earlier on that Saul's daughter, David's wife Michal, had looked out a window and had saw the reckless abandonment with which David was worshiping the Lord. And she despised him in her heart. And it was a terrible thing that she did. And verse 20 reads, "Then David returned to bless his household. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, 'How glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows, shamelessly uncovering himself.'" Now, this on the surface sounds like a real pious way to rebuke the man of God. But she is about to be exposed in her hypocrisy. She is accusing the man of God in his reckless abandonment, in his following of God's divine order, very much unlike her father that was rejected in Israel and had ultimately been judged of the Lord. The man to whom David would not even put his hand against, lest he would touch the Lord's anointed. Yet here comes Michal in the very same, if I could just say it this way, spirit or attitude of her father, that just giving a little bit of obedience is enough. We should not recklessly obey the Lord in the things that we do, and is making him to feel like somehow he should be ashamed for the way in which he is giving himself wholly unto God. I think of the terribleness of what she is saying to him. It's almost like I can hear the voice of compromise in her mouth. Think about the handmaids. In other words, people will not respect you, especially the women. The women will look down upon you. The common women will look down upon you, David. The women that respect you. Think about what the handmaidens think of you, David, in what you're doing. You are actually causing them to despise you or to think less of you. I think about how that is so much the voice of compromise. The voice of compromise always has a reason for disobeying God. The voice of compromise always has a reason to have some other thing to say, to do in the place of total and complete abandonment, total and complete sacrifice, total and complete obedience unto the Lord. She used something that she thought would trigger David's feeling. The handmaidens, the women. Now, if you follow what David is about to say, you will learn a very great lesson. "And David said unto Michal, It was before the Lord, which chose me before thy father." See, he's reminding her, your father never danced before the Lord with all of his might. Your father, when he was rebuked of the Lord, didn't go back and try to find a place of repentance and then go back and try to do things right. But he continued on in his rebellion. As a matter of fact, even lifted up a spear and other measures against the man after God's own heart. You see, this is a confrontation between those after God's own heart and those that want to live according to their own will and purpose. And it's a showdown indeed. David continues. He said, "It was before the Lord who chose me before thy father and before all his house to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore will I play before the Lord." I think about how David was so utterly thankful. He was so thankful. He knew that he was a man of low stature. I think about how God rebuked Saul. He said, "When you were small in your own eyes, I made you king in Israel." You see, David never forgot that there was a time in his life when he was small in his own eyes. But the Lord looked down upon him and made him who he was. You see, he wasn't a self-made man. David never forgot it. And what David is saying here is God is worth it. God is worth it. God is worth it. He is worthy to be worshipped and reckless abandon. He is worthy to be utterly obeyed. He is worthy that even after we had done something that we thought was right, or we tried to do it right, and maybe even our heart was right in it, and yet we were way off, was willing to go back and say, "Lord, let your grace come to me a second time." He said, "I will play before the Lord." You see, this is a different kind of play altogether. This is when the mind and heart is so totally focused on God, so utterly desirous of obedience. I can almost see David leaping and shouting and worshiping God. And I like verse 22. "And I will yet be more vile than thus." Or, in the words of one brother, "I will be more vile yet. And I will be base, or I will be humble in my own sight. And of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be seen in honor." You see, the devil likes to make people believe through the voice of the Michals, through the voice of compromise, that if you just hold back, then the handmaidens will respect you more. Oh, I suppose that maybe there are some rebellious handmaidens that probably thought just like Michal did. But David wasn't talking about them. He was talking about the ones like unto himself. The ones whose opinion mattered a little more than those ones that were in rebellion.